Welcome to the God, Where Are You podcast, where we explore faith in the midst of suffering, hope in the midst of grief, and God's presence in the midst of it all. I'm your host, Dominique Young, and I wrote the book, God, Where Are You? Unmasking Your Pain, Uncovering His Presence, to share the lessons I've learned about finding God when life feels hard, confusing, and painful. Each week, we'll have real conversations that help you unmask your pain, wrestle with the hard questions, and uncover God's presence in ways that bring healing, clarity, and hope. If you've ever felt like God is silent, distant, or nowhere to be found, this is the place for you. Let's journey together, one honest conversation at a time. Hey friends, welcome to the God, Where Are You podcast. I am Dominique Young and I am so excited to be on this journey with you all as we journey through faith and struggle and suffering and hope and finding God in the midst of it all. And I want to start this journey off asking you this question. Have you ever, you got to be honest, have you ever asked the question, God, where are you? Have you ever asked that question? If you have, just raise your hand wherever you are. I'm raising mine because I have asked that question multiple times. I don't know if you were going through a particular struggle, or maybe you were seeing things on the news, or maybe you got bad news about what was going on with your family, and you were literally just wondering, God, where are you? I have asked that question so many times in my life. But my next question is this: have you ever actually sought the answer? Now, for some of us, the answer to that question is yes, I've sought the answer, I've found the answer. But for many of us, it's like, well, no, actually, it was more like a cry or like a sigh that I was letting out, but I never actually actively sought out the answer. And if that is your response, if you're like, no, I never actually sought out the answer, then I'm here to tell you that you are like a lot like me. I was a lot like that. I would cry out, God, where are you? But I didn't actually seek the answer. And there was a couple of reasons why I didn't seek the answer. For one, I assumed I knew the answer. And it was more like a sigh of frustration, a sigh of hopelessness, as opposed to a real question that I was seeking. And another reason is because I assumed I wasn't going to get an answer. Sometimes it wasn't because I knew the answer, but it was because I assumed I wasn't going to get an answer. Like I had prayed for this thing so many times and I had heard nothing. And so therefore I assumed that there was no answer coming. So I just said the question out loud, just in my frustration for not having the answer and not actually expecting an answer. And another reason was because I was too busy to be curious. There was so much going on in my life that I almost let out that sigh or that grunt of God, where are you? In all of my busyness. But then I went right on to the next thing because I'm like, who has time to actually figure that out? Who has time to actually, seek and find him right now? I've got so many things going on. And usually when I asked that question, it was because my life felt like it was absolutely falling apart. So I felt really too busy to be curious. And also, I wasn't actually asking the question. This is one of the things that I had to come to grips with, was that I began to realize that I wasn't actually asking a question. I was drawing a conclusion. That when I let out this sigh, when I let out this cry that said, God, where are you? I was actually saying, you're not here. I was drawing a conclusion that God was not with me. Why aren't you here? Would probably have been a more accurate depiction of what I was feeling. Why aren't you here? Why aren't you helping me? Why aren't you doing this? But instead, I let out this cry, where are you? But really, I was drawing this conclusion that God wasn't there. And this all changed, y'all. This all changed in 2015. I am not one that remembers years. I forget my wedding anniversary most of the time. But I remember 2015 like it was yesterday, specifically October 2015. And the reason that I remember it is because this was the time in which my life felt like it fell completely apart. I now realize that it was actually coming together, but it did not feel like that in the moment. I was pregnant with my second son, and I was dealing with a ton of mental health issues, like a ton. And instead of going and getting help, instead of seeking any support, I just hid it away. And I was like, God, you've got to heal me. You've got to heal me from this depression. You've got to heal me from this anxiety. You've got to heal me from all the things that are going on in my mind that are happening. You got to heal me. And so I would pray these silent prayers or these quiet prayers to God. And day after day, week after week, I felt like God was not hearing me because he was not healing me. And day after day, week after week, month after month, I would cry out, God, where are you? And I knew that I was getting to the brink of like a complete and utter breakdown. But I just was like, God, you got to heal me. Please, you got to heal me. And I was had this big smile on, when I went in front of people and was completely breaking down behind the scenes until October 2015 came around, and I was hospitalized. I was put into a mental health hospital because they said you were a danger to yourself and to others. My mind was so scattered. I was so low that the doctor was like, I can't send you home to be with your child. I can't send you home because what's happening right now is not safe. And I remember going into that mental hospital. I remember I sat in the lobby for the longest time because I was like, I don't need to be here. I don't need to be here. So I sat in a lobby with a blanket. And the people there, a few of the people there chuckled, and I heard one one person there call me Linus from Charlie Brown because I had like this blanket and I was like wrapped up in this blanket, but I refused to go to my room because I refused to admit that I was here and that they were keeping me. I mean, they took everything. They took my bra, they took my wedding ring, which I never take off. They took anything that they thought I could harm myself with. And then they put me in a room with a roommate. And I was like, oh no, absolutely not. And to me, it felt like my life was falling apart. It felt like my reputation was at risk because for this long, I had kept all of my mental health issues under wraps. Like I was looking great on the outside, falling apart on the inside. But now Dominique is in the mental hospital and everybody knows. And everybody, I knew it. They were just asking questions and wondering what happened. And I felt like, oh, this is the worst thing that could have ever happened. That's what I felt. And I remember eventually I went to the bed that I was going to sleep in because I did eventually get tired and I did eventually realize this is silly. I can't stay in the lobby. And so I went into that bedroom. My roommate wasn't there at the time. And I remember laying on this super hard bed saying, God, where are you? But this time I was desperate for the answer. This time I was desperate for the answer. No longer would anything else do. I needed to know, God, where are you? I was asking a couple questions actually with that one question. I was asking, God, where are you? And I was also asking, God, are you real? Are you there? Have I been just believing in someone that's not actually there? Like, I need to know this. Like, I need to know where you are. I need to know where you are. And it was that moment that changed my life. The moment where I actually decided that I want to find you. If you are findable, God, I want to find you. There's this scripture in Jeremiah 29:13, and it says, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. And it's interesting that this particular scripture, the prophet was talking to Israel in the midst of captivity, in the midst of all the storm, and he was preparing them for difficult times that are going to happen ahead. He was preparing them for the hardships that were coming, but he was saying, look, but if you seek me In the midst of this hardship, you will find me when you seek me with your whole heart. And it was in that moment on that hospital bed where I was like, God, you know what? A false theology won't do. I can no longer just pretend like I know you. I can no longer just pretend like I have a relationship with you. I can no longer just pretend like I know where you are. God, I need to know where you are. I need to know you. And everything from that moment fell apart and everything from that moment came back together. And why do I say everything from that moment fell apart? It's because in that moment, all of what I thought I knew about God, I had to drop it. All the things that I thought I knew, I was like, no, I'm not okay with just thinking. Like, I need to know. I need to know you. I need to know where you are. I need to be able to hold on to you in the midst of difficult times. And I'll be honest, at that point in my life, I had this theology where if I believed hard enough, no difficulty would come in my life. So I was wrecked. Like, why is this happening to me? And I had to relinquish that. I was like, look, I can no longer say that no difficulty will come in my life because difficulty is here. So I had to lay that down. I can no longer say if I pray hard enough because I've prayed as hard as I possibly could and it's still here. So I had to lay that down and I had to say, okay, God, I don't have any other things that I'm holding. I need to find you. And there were three things, three parts of this journey, if I could kind of chunk it into three, that I went on as I started to relearn who God was. And the first thing, the first journey that I went on was actually interesting because I thought that when I was calling out, God, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? That God would show me where he was. But the interesting thing that came next was a journey of me finding out where I was. And this seems so strange. And I actually write about it in my book, God, Where Are You? I start here with finding myself. And it feels weird. It's like, wait, I came to this book saying, God, where are you? But what I realized on my journey is it's really hard to find someone when you don't know where you are. The person could be right there behind a tree. But if you don't know where you are, it's really hard to figure out where they are in reference to where you are, right? I think about one day, funny story. If my mom is listening, mom, I'm about to tell this funny story. So one day, my mom, she was driving on the road and she was driving to our house, me and my husband. And my husband and I, we were in our house the whole day. We had not moved. We were where we told her we were, right? But she was on the highway and she had no idea where she was. So it didn't really matter that we knew where we were and that we were telling her we're here. We gave her the address. We told her where we were, but she couldn't find us because she didn't know where she was. And I remember this, it was so hilarious. My husband gets on the phone and she's like, I'm lost. I can't find where I'm at. And he says, well, what do you see? What signs do you see? And she says, I see a sign that says 12. And now I see a sign that says 13. And Steve looks at me like, what? And I said, she's looking at the mile markers, babe. She's reading the signs of the mile markers because she was so desperate. She didn't know where she was. So until we could figure out where she was, we couldn't get her to where we were. And this is the same thing with God. I find it so interesting that when God comes to Adam and Eve in the garden after they had eaten the fruit, he asks them, where are you? Right? That is step one. When I am lost, when I feel like I don't know where God is, I have to find out where I am emotionally, where I am spiritually, where I am mentally, where am I, and be honest about it. Because the thing about it is, if we go back to the example with my mom, if my mom was not honest about where she was because she was embarrassed, And she was like, well, and she was kind of pretending like she knew and she was making up stories, then she would have never gotten to where she was trying to go. But because she was painfully honest. She was telling us mile markers and everything, y'all. She was like, look, I'm going to tell y'all exactly where I am so you can find out where I am. And because of that brutal honesty, she was able to get to where we were. And so after the finding myself journey, I went on another journey, and it was a finding God journey. And this journey was quite interesting because it was a journey about finding God specifically in difficult moments in my life, like where I went back mentally to places that were challenging, to traumatic situations, to suffering moments. And I said, okay, God, help me find you. Like I literally would go back in my memory to places I didn't want to go because I hated those times. Like I just did. It's like one of those things that you don't want to relive, but I would go back and I would do this activity of finding God, understanding his character and how that character showed up in the darkest moments of my life. And then after that, I went on a journey of finding us, meaning finding myself and God together. What does our relationship look like? And in the book that I wrote, I actually map all these things out and we do activities and all that stuff. But we're going to talk about this on this podcast. We're going to talk about how do I find myself? How do I find where I am when I'm disconnected from my emotions or when I've been shoving them down so long that I don't even know where I am? If you ask me how I feel, I don't know. There was a time, and still today actually, because I spend so much time shoving my emotions down, sometimes it's really hard for me to identify what I feel. I don't know if you're like that, but sometimes it's really hard for me to identify what I feel. And it's almost like my favorite feeling word is frustrated. Like I say it for everything. I'm frustrated because it was like the only word I could actually access. And the more I'm learning about where I'm at, the more I'm able to express and identify what's going on. But we're going to talk about this on this podcast. We're going to talk about finding God on the podcast. We're going to talk about going back to those hard moments in our lives. And we're going to talk about all this stuff. Like this is just the beginning of this journey. We're going to talk about finding our relationship with God. After everything crumbles, let me tell you something. The relationship between you and God looks a little bit different after it's gone through some things, right? After you've gone through and you walk through some things, you learning what that relationship looks like is so important. But before we go on this journey, throughout this podcast, we're going to have many different episodes. We're going to have interviews. We're going to bring on mental health practitioners. We're going to do all that stuff. But before we do that, I want to ask you a question and I need you to answer it. Okay, you ready? Do you believe God is findable? When you ask the question, God, where are you? Do you believe that you can find him? And even if you're like, yes, but that yes is a whisper, look, that's good enough. It don't even got to be a loud yes. If you believe he's findable, come on, then we've got places to go. We are ready for this journey. But I have a few more questions to ask you just so that you can access where you are. Look, I want you to be honest when you answer these questions. This is the beginning of our journey. This is episode 1. This is episode 1. So we're going to practice being honest. And I want to let you know that nobody's looking at you sideways, depending on your answer. Even if you're like, I don't know that I believe that God is findable. That's okay too. Stay with us. Stay with me here because I was kind of there too. But this is my next question. You ready? Why have you stopped looking for God? If you are in a place or a posture where you found that you just stopped looking for God, and sometimes it's hard to realize that you stopped looking for God. Like I just started accepting, like, oh, this is what it is. And I stopped searching and I stopped seeking. And the question is, why? Be honest. It could be because I'm afraid of being let down. I'm afraid I won't find him. I've stopped looking because I'm too busy. I don't have time. I've stopped looking because I'm too hurt. Why have you stopped looking for God? And then the next question is, where have you stopped looking for God? Like, you may go to church every Sunday and be like, oh, I love the Lord, but within my marriage, I'm no longer looking for God because it feels so hopeless. Or within my parenting, I'm no longer looking for God. Or within my traumatic experiences, I'm no longer looking for God. Or within my relationships, I'm no longer looking for God. Or within my mental or emotional health, I find that I'm no longer looking for God in these places. Maybe I'm looking for God. I might be looking for God for like who he wants me to marry, but I'm not looking for God in healing from mental health issues and concerns. And the question is, where have you stopped looking for God? Because this tells us a lot. And this is not about judging. This is not about fixing you or anything. This is about identifying, just the start of a journey of identifying where I am. That's it. And then my last question is this: are you ready to go on a journey of finding God in the midst of suffering? Are you ready to go on a journey of finding God in the midst of suffering? If your answer is yes, I want you to remember this podcast, to come back every week. I will put this podcast on publish, or I'll publish this podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. You can listen to it then. You can listen to it at some point throughout the week. But every Sunday at 4 p.m. for at least the next 15 weeks, we are going to meet together. I'm going to bring some amazing guests on. We are going to talk and have conversations, and we are going to dig deep. And if 15 weeks, you're like, I want to dig even more. If today you're like, I want to dig even more, I also have written a book called God, Where Are You? And it comes out in January of 2026, but you can get the free first chapter, which really is the first part of the journey of finding out where you are. There's reflection questions and things in there to dig deeper. And I will put the link in the show notes so that you can access the first chapter of this book and begin this journey. But we will be here every Sunday, me and you. We in this together now. So if you are saying, hey, you know what? I am ready. I'm ready to go on a journey. I want to find God in the midst of suffering. Sometimes it's easier for us to see God when everything is going great. And we're like, oh, God, you showing out. Go God, go God. But when everything is crumbling, we're like, okay, now I don't know how to see you here. And I want to walk with you on this journey because I believe that finding God in the midst of suffering has been the most life-changing thing, the most life-changing journey I've ever been on. And it would be such a privilege and an honor to walk that out with you. If you enjoyed this episode, consider coming back for the next one. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with somebody else. This is the start of the journey, but we are going to continue. I'll be back again at 4 p.m. next Sunday, and then the next Sunday, and then the next Sunday, as we journey together to actually answer the question, God, where are you? I love you guys so much. And I know you're probably like, girl, you don't even know me. Let me tell you something. The fact that you're here, the fact that you desire to see God in the midst of your grief, in the midst of your heartache, in the midst of your suffering, I love you because I know what that journey feels like. And I am so grateful to walk alongside you, that it's literally love pouring out of me just to be able to walk this journey with you. And so I hope that you will join me again next week as we dig a little deeper and as we have more conversations and as we press in on this journey of finding God in the midst of pain, in the midst of heartache, in the midst of heartbreak, in the midst of grief, unmasking all of our pain and uncovering his presence. I'll see you real soon. Bye for now. Thanks so much for joining me for today's episode of God, Where Are You? My prayer is that today's conversation reminded you that even in the midst of suffering, God is still near, working, healing, and loving you through it all. If this encouraged you, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave a review so others can find hope too. And don't forget to grab a copy of my book, God, Where Are You? Unmasking Your Pain, Uncovering His Presence. Available now wherever books are sold. Until next time, remember, God is not far. He's right there with you in the midst of it all.